Welcome to That Entrepreneur Life, a podcast about entrepreneurship that takes you from idea to launch and beyond. Each week, your hosts, Andrew Lees and Clint McPherson, discuss different business topics aimed at adding value to any entrepreneur's journey.
Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of That Entrepreneur Life. I'm Andrew Lees, and I'm joined with my co-host, Clint McPherson. What's up, man?
Not much, brother. Again, like always, man, I can't say it enough. Every time we get on and record an episode of this podcast, I get excited. Every guest that we have has a different story, and it just, I know when our listeners hear it, because it has so much influence and impact on what we're trying to do on our podcast, that we just want these different stories being told by all these entrepreneurs and people that are getting out there and doing the damn thing, right? So without further ado, man, let's go ahead and kick this thing off by welcoming our special guest today, Reece Richiardi, to the show. How you doing, brother?
Yeah, really good to be, really happy to be here, boys. Thank you for getting me on from all the way over in England. So yeah, thanks for getting me on. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, it's never been easier now with Zoom and, you know, all these different, we're definitely, we could do this before the pandemic, but now it just gives us a better excuse to connect with people all around the world like yourself. So it's really cool. Exactly. Yeah. It's pretty wild, but you know, we're making it work. So Reece, it's awesome to have you on the show today. Before we get into everything, can you just give a quick overview of who you are and what you're all about?
Yeah, sure. God, where do I start? So I started life like many young lads in England. I wanted to be a footballer, so be a soccer player over where you are. And you know, here, football is our sport that we just play. So in England, like especially being a working class guy like I am, the only thing to really do in life, you aspire to be a footballer, and that's all you set your dreams on. So for as long as I could ever remember, I played football from, all my life, as long as I can remember, and then played at a high level up to the age of 18, and then I didn't get a pro contract and I got released. So it works a little bit different in England than what it does over your side of the world, I think. So how it happens, you play in the academies up to 16, then you get something called a 2-year, like a youth team scholarship, where you're playing full-time football, and then at 18 you get a pro contract, and that's how it works. And then you stay on and you become a pro. So I didn't get a pro at 18, dropped down the leagues, and that was a real start for me, where looking back now, I didn't know it at that time, that was where things really started going downhill for me. And I felt like I'd failed my family. I felt I'd let myself down. I didn't do very well at school because I'm dyslexic. And to be honest, I just didn't try because I thought, I'm going to be a footballer. I don't need to worry about school, which is a story for most lads. So then it was the start of a downhill battle, but it was very publicly, it didn't come across that way. So I was in a very dark place, and I remember saying to myself, right, as a man, how do I make myself feel better? And, and the answer within the world and in our society is to become so-called rich and successful. So that was my mission in life, right? To make yourself feel better, become rich, get everything that you want, get the money, get the girls, get the whatever you think is going to make you happy.
Right.
And I did that, and I was even more miserable. And I was like, what the fuck can I swear? Is that okay? Sorry.
No, yeah, you're good, man. We're good.
That's fine.
Yeah. Keep it raw and organic, brother.
Yeah, that's me, man. I was like, what the fuck's happening here? I've got everything that I thought was going to bring me happiness and purpose, and I'd have happily jumped off a bridge. But not many people knew that. From the outside looking in, I was this young lad who had a successful property business and was driving around in the car that I always wanted, and had all the things going on, nights out and spending thousands of pounds on tables and all that kind of dumb shit. And I was so lonely and so depressed, and I just wanted to end everything. And then by the time I was 24, I'd lost absolutely everything. I was on this path of destruction, and it was the biggest blessing that I had, was losing everything, because it allowed me to look internally and see what I actually want from life, and who am I. And ever since then, I've been on this path of finding myself and helping other people go through the things that I went through, and trying to hopefully learn from what I went through and not go through what I went through, if that makes sense. So that's a real overview within a couple of minutes of my life, if you like.
Yeah. I mean, thank you for sharing. It's great that you are so open about that. I think it is important for especially guys, I think, to know that, there's other guys out there who, we're not all, we're vulnerable, right? Like there's things that affect us as guys. It's not all just like, suck it up, toughen it out, you're fine. And, okay, cool. Then magically everything gets solved. It's just not like that. And for anybody. So it's really important for, for guys like you to come out and talk about that kind of thing and, how to face it and how to overcome it. So that's
definitely,
really cool.
Man. I think the thing is as well is like, there's not much education out there when it comes to that kind of stuff. I mean, things have definitely got better where you can, everyone's talking more about mental health and how you can, talk about things and raise awareness. But there was nothing really, I didn't have anybody in my life who'd been through that and publicly been through what I was going through that I could kind of look at. And to be honest, I wasn't in a place to listen. Somebody could have told me and I wouldn't have heard it. I had to go through what I went through so I could hear it within myself. So I think we're getting better as a society is speaking about it, especially for men, but we have to change the things that we put on a pedestal and what we think are important as a society to make people actually become better and stop chasing the wrong shit.
Oh, for sure, man. Yeah, man, I 100% agree with that, man. And I think social media has a big impact in the way, you see all these influencers and everybody thinks they got it made. And then their life is beautiful, peaches and creams. They've hit the they've climbed that mountain and they got to where they wanted to. But man, the people, influencers and individuals that we see, it's all outward appearance, right? Like you don't see what they're actually struggling with. And then if they lose some followers, man, it's like the end of the world for them, right? And so that's really a thing that you got to look, like everybody's journey is different. We're all humans. And, as men, I really think it's a really one of those things for us, especially if you have a type A personality, to not show weakness. Because when you show weakness, it's a vulnerability. Or if you show emotion, it's a vulnerability. Or, it's a way that, like, if you show love or express your love, it's a vulnerability, right? Like, it shows weakness to some people. And we got to understand that it's not weakness, that when we're in that dark place, there's always some light that gets shined on us from somewhere, but we have to be willing to listen and also learn, like you said, like when you're going to be ready when you're ready. And when it's time for you to listen, that's when, it's like we have to realize, like, put our egos aside, put our dreams or what we thought we were going to be initially aside, because I'm a firm believer of everything happens for a reason. And we're in the right headspace, right time. We're where we are supposed to be currently, whether that's going through a shitstorm, whether it's, somebody passing, somebody that you love, you lose them. But I mean, at the end of the day, we're never given something that we cannot make it to the other side through. And then when we give up, if we give up, then that means again that we just, it threw in the towel when you could have kept going. And I've had a lot of friends commit suicide in the past. I know a lot of people that have lost their lives. I served 10 years in the military, so I know what it's like. Every 22 seconds, they say a guy in the military or somebody in the military, female as well, that commit suicide. And it's sad, man, because again, it's like there's a structured environment. We're there, but we don't know what to do when we get out. And I really think we got to do everything possible to understand that whatever you're currently going through right now, there's somebody else that has it worse, or it's not the end of your story. So you just have to push through. So Reece, man, I mean, you mentioned a little bit of what you went through, right? And I really commend you for getting to where you are today, right? Because there's nobody better that when I look at something, when somebody goes through something, because like I know I mentioned a little bit offline, like I've been through, bouts of depression from getting injured in the military, having so many surgeries and not being able to bounce back and thinking I was going to have a 20-year career and I didn't. and decided to get out and fight in that bouts of depression and like, why me and all this other stuff. But man, like when you go through something and you sit down with people and there's a therapist that you're like, I don't even think like, can you really relate to me? You might be able to read this stuff in a book, but have you actually been through this? And so you've gotten to the point where you're a men's mental health and performance coach, which I commend you for that, man. But can you take us back to where your entrepreneurial journey started and when that fire started burning within you to like have the courage to push forward and do that, man?
Yeah, that's a great question, mate. My entrepreneurial journey started without even really realizing it when I was young. So I always played football, but when I wasn't playing football, I'd be doing things. Me and my brother, we were always trying to make money. So we would, we lived on this street. And do you get moles over there? Like little mole? Yeah. So we'd go around to the gardens on the people on the street and we'd knock on the door and we'd say, oh, we've got rid of your molehills. And what we'd do, we'd just get a spade and they'd just flatten the molehills out. And then we'd say, oh, we've got rid of your moles. Can we have a quid? And they'd give us £1. And that's what we did. And then we'd go around the estate, washing people's cars. And to be honest, the cars were that shit after we'd finished. I think because we were young, they were just giving us money to like, oh, look at these young lads trying to make a few. But yeah, they were dirtier than when we started, when we finished. But so I was always kind of obsessed with money. And I remember I used to get money when I was young and I'd iron it and I'd save it and then I'd lend it to my brother. And he never seemed to have any money and I always used to have money. I used to iron it and I was obsessed with money. And when I stopped playing football, I was doing anything for money. I've always been, I'd turn my hand to anything. I had an ego at the time, but I never had an ego that I'll never not do that job. I had a van and I used to go out in my van and pick up scrap metal and go and weigh that in and get money for that. I used to do anything just to make money. And but my entrepreneurial journey started properly with property when I stopped playing football. My uncle was a big property developer and I always looked at him like, I looked up to him in a really big way. He was like a role model for me. And when I didn't play football, who was the next person I wanted to be? It was my uncle. So I started laboring for him on his property development sites, basically. I started off filling skips and ripping houses out and things like that. Always knowing that I wanted to be like my uncle. And just had this vision in my head. I'm gonna be like my uncle. I'm gonna learn from him, and and that was that. And it was really powerful for me because he kind of let me figure things out myself. He said, if you want to do this, you need to go invest in your own education. You need to put the work in. And he was always very supportive and helped me, but he never gave me there is everything on a plate, if that makes sense. He made me, yeah, exactly. He made me work for where I wanted to be. And I ended up setting a business up with him, which was really powerful. And it was amazing. I ended up losing everything, but I did that with him. And the property stuff was the start of my journey. And I just built things. And then when I got to a stage where the property stuff was going really well, and then I went on this path of death and destruction, and I'm lucky to not be dead or be in prison or whatever. And then I lost everything. And I went back into this place of, well, I've had the money. I wasn't like Jeff Bezos, but I was doing all right for a young lad. And I knew that I wanted to do something that I had true meaning for. And I woke up and thought, this is something I really want to do. So going into what I'm doing now and getting into the coaching that I do now and the work that I do in men and mental health and the work that I do in mental health and football clubs and things like that, it all come from my own experiences and my own failures. And that was really a time where I had to do it. I felt I had to do it, lads. Like, I couldn't explain it. I had this feeling inside of me where if I didn't pursue this for what I wanted to truly do with my life, I'd just end up being depressed again. Because I think with depression, I think it's always in you. Like, for me personally, I can only speak from my own personal experience, but for me, my own dark place that I can get to, if I'm very aware of the patterns that I go into now, so I can kind of notice myself going into them and stop myself getting into that full dark place. And if I do get there, I'm aware of it and I can get myself out. Whereas a lot of people aren't really aware. It's taken me years and years of work to get to a place where I can actually do that. So it's important for people, for myself, we have these routines that we noticed and we're self-aware and we notice what we're actually doing and how we're slipping into these patterns. So that's what I do. That was the start of my entrepreneurial journey, if you like. It's a bit of a long-winded answer, but
yeah, no, that's great. Yeah, started from the beginning, and you definitely had to make. I mean, you thought your football career was going to take off, but then it sounds like maybe that really kicked back your entrepreneurial spirit back into gear, where you were like, all right, let me do, I'm going to work with my uncle. I'm going to, do what he's doing, and then start my own thing from that, and figure out how can I have my own business and kind of, do your own thing, because it sounds like that had always been, part of who you were. Like playing football was a big part, obviously, but being an entrepreneur, it sounds like was like right there,
Yeah.
So that's pretty cool that you kind of came back to that.
Definitely. And I think it's the ability to have the freedom. Like I was 25 when I got my first job, which is kind of crazy, really. So I stopped playing football and I just worked for myself ever since. And I taught you through that because there'd probably be a bit of value in that. So when I got my first job at 25, I knew that I wanted to pursue a career in helping people, in coaching and things I was passionate about, mental health and helping other people. And I knew that I couldn't do it whilst I was still running my business, because when you're running a business, it's everybody thinks, oh, it's entrepreneur life's great, but it's fucking stressful, because the worst boss in the world is yourself, and you can't relax on the night, you can't relax on the weekend, and you can if you enjoy it. But for me, because I wasn't enjoying what I was doing and I was just doing it for money, I couldn't switch off from it. So I had to say to myself, I'm going to get rid of all of this company and all these things that I've been building, and make a transition to get a full-time job so I can pursue coaching and personal development and mental health as a career. And at 25, to make that jump in the opposite way, because people think, oh, you get a job and then you work for yourself. I worked for myself and then got a job. So I could build something to work for myself that I was truly passionate about. And everyone was like, you're fucking crazy. Why would you do that? Why wouldn't you just work for yourself? And I'm like, well, it all comes down to self-awareness and what you truly want. And I knew that I had to pay my bills, so I had the headspace to be creative in my true passions. Yeah.
But after you start your own business and what all is involved, because there's so much involved, you have to wear so many hats. It can be all consuming. It sounds like you made a smart move to say, hey, while I need to pay the bills, and while I'm working on this other thing that you figured wasn't going to support you for a while, which is smart. Most things don't support you right away. You decided, all right, let me do something that's not all consuming to make money. Get a 9-to-5, do that thing until you can build up these other businesses. So I think that's smart. That's tough. I mean, I think that's a tough leap, because for any entrepreneur, right, you're just giving something up, but it's a sacrifice. It's an investment into the future of what you want to do.
And the thing is as well, mate, you've hit the nail on the head, because I went into an office. Now, I've not been to university or anything like that. Now, I'm a working class guy. I'm from the north in England, so I talk like, you guys probably won't recognize my accent, but English people listening to this will be like, you're a northern lad. And I could come across a bit, I say it how it is. And, I was going into a corporate world in property where everyone's been to university. It's a property industry, real estate industry in England, and house building, what I'm in now. It's quite well to do, if you like. Everyone's kind of, from an upper class than what I was from, if that makes sense, is probably what I'm trying to say. So when I went into the office, it was kind of like, oh, here's this guy. He's got no experience in the corporate world. He's not been to university. He's got no anything like that. So in my head, my ego is going, no, fuck you. I've done all this. And I stopped playing. I've been out there building the business that you work for, not on the same scale, but, I've been out there in the real world making money doing this. I chose to be here, kind of thing. So my ego in my head was like, fucking no, Reece, go back and do real estate again. Go and be a developer and show these people. But I had to be, everybody's got that. And I had to be self-aware that I was doing that for me. I'm on the right path for me, and people won't understand it. But when when I get the business to where it needs to be, and I'm helping the people that I need to help, other people will start to understand what I'm doing.
Yeah.
And it's not about them,
Exactly. Yeah. And until you get it to the point where people do look at it and say, oh, I understand what you were doing there. That makes sense. Okay. I understand why you were, grinding away all those, weeks, months and years. But it takes a while for it to make sense and click for other people, I mean, and I think, and that's tough because you have to, you think, oh, am I really on the right path? Is this crazy? Is this, kind of insane what I'm doing? Am I even on the right path? Am I doing things right? And, so even people who are supportive might say, you should do this or that, or, doesn't look like you're doing it right. And that can kind of eat away at you. Right. So you gotta just kind of trust what you're doing and trust the path that you're on and just chip away. And maybe it doesn't work out it won't work out exactly the way that you planned, probably. Right. But, and maybe the business you're starting doesn't work out at all. But as long as you keep going, there's probably, and you really want to continue you want to have a business, in the end, right? That's the point. You have a mission and you're trying to fulfill that mission. You're just going to keep at it until you break through. Right. So
definitely, man. Yeah. And it's one of them where I could always go and do the things that I did before. I could set up another business, doing the business, the property stuff, and do that again and do it successfully. But I don't want to. That's the different thing. Why do I want to go and do something just for the money? Because to me, that's a job. I went and got a job because I needed to pay my bills. Whereas if you've got a business, and I know you hear the old Gary Vee thing of hustle all the time. When it's your own, you still have to keep checking some kind of way. How am I doing? How are we growing the business? What are we doing? And it's consuming. Anybody who listens to this who has a business, your business can consume you if you're not careful. So the only times it doesn't feel consuming is when you love it. And even when you love something, there's still times where you think, fuck this, I can't be asked doing that tonight. Because that's just human nature. And you've got to be able to, in my experience, you've got to be able to focus on things, take the time away, focus on things that you truly want to be doing and you're passionate about. Because otherwise, what is money? Like you said, you've lost friends that kill themselves to suicide. I was there. I lost a very good friend to suicide who had again, successful guy, had a family, 2 kids. And I lost another friend who was successful, had a family. And I just think all men who all had money, all had businesses, were so-called made it in life, and they took their own life. So yeah, it's crazy, man.
You gotta have fun with the journey, and you've gotta have something that you really are passionate about and that really fulfills you. And so to that point, you started Manspired and also Mind on Side, right? So a couple of communities for men to support mental health and overall well-being. We kind of we talked about what inspired you to start those communities, but can you talk a little bit more about what they do and how you're helping guys with their mental health?
Yeah. So, Manspired is for men. It's a coaching and mental health platform for men and community. And Mind on Side is mental health and wellbeing coaching for sports organizations, like what I did with football, mainly football. So I'll start with Manspired. And coming back to what we just spoke about, I see a lot of men who have struggled a lot with their mental health, and so many men are striving for so-called success, they're striving for money, all the things that so many people have and give away and don't want. And I just felt like everything was broken. I see some amazing groups for women that are supporting each other, and there was very little in England for men. There were some really good groups, but there weren't anything that I could kind of relate to. So I thought, right, I'll start my own thing. So I started coaching men within their personal lives and helping them find purpose in their mental health and passions and all these things. And then that kind of turned into a hiking group. So Manspired, we're now doing Manspired hikes where we're basically getting men outside to walk and hike and talk and have a laugh and have some banter. And it's just getting lads outside to walk and talk, really, because, being outdoors for me, it's very therapeutic. I enjoy it. And when you've got a group of guys and you're all talking shit and having a laugh and, taking the piss out of each other, it's a good day out, and it's what people need. And I think that it's a double-edged sword with men in society now, because on one side we have to be able to share our feelings more, and like you said at the start, we have to be able to express how we feel and know that it's not a sign of weakness. But there's also a side to that as well, where there's times in my life where I needed a bloke to come in and sit me down and say, Reece, sort your fucking shit out, man up and get on with what you need to do. You've got responsibilities, you need to do these things. And so I think we have to find the balance between men looking for that positive male role model who can pick them up out of the shit and inspire them, but also let them know that when you need to be a warrior, you can, but when you need to cry and show your feelings, and that's also what a warrior does. So it's having that double-edged sword, and that's what I'm trying to do with Manspired, is to educate men around the truths around mental health, because in the industry, there's so much bullshit, and I want it to be a really say it how it is, straightforward community where people do things that work for them, and you don't have to wake up at 5 o'clock every day and look yourself in the mirror and tell yourself you're amazing in order to be successful. You've got to do what works for you. So that is Manspired, and that's growing, and that's amazing. And we're doing a challenge, not this weekend after. So we're going to be doing 26 miles over hiking over these peaks in England for Christmas. So that's going to be cool. The plan with that is just to keep growing that. And hopefully the vision is that we have people all over the world organizing hikes under Manspired and tagging us in it and starting their own little communities of walking all over the world, and men. And I think when it happens, that would be fucking amazing. Like, anybody who's listening to this who's not in England, and if you want to start walking and tagging Manspired and getting blokes outside, we're just making ambassadors in each area and get blokes walking outside together across the world. I think that'd be wonderful to help men have somewhere. So yeah, that's where that's going. That's Manspired. And then Mind on Side is basically going into clubs and helping with the problem that I face. So like when I got released, I was talking to somebody today about this actually. So I was 9 years old when I first got released from a club because I got a groin strain. And I thought my life was over. Like I thought, this is it. This is my career's done at 9. And I remember my mum was like, oh no, it's fine. You're only 9. And I'm like, no, this is it. I've failed everybody. This is it. My career's over. And then I got released another 3 more times after that before my career was done. And as I said, when that happens, it's a really tough place to be in. And just in the past few months, there's been 2 young lads, one who played for Manchester United, one who played for Manchester City, who've both killed themselves. They got released, I think 16 and 17-year-olds who got released from the academies, and they've killed themselves. And one of my friends sent it to me and said, you've got to do something about this. Like, not meaning me, as in like, somebody has to. And I was like, I'm going to do it. It's my story. I know it. I've got contacts in football and sports. And I tried to do this when I was 21, something called After Sport. And it never really took off because I didn't have the passion for it. I didn't really know why I was doing it. So I started Mind on Side to basically go into clubs and do that, offer the support. So basically what we do now, we offer professional sports organizations, football clubs to start with, support on their mental health and wellbeing from academy level all the way up to professional level. And then for 12 months when they leave the club. So they're getting all full-time support, which is completely independent from the club and the football association. So that's really, really exciting me at the minute because we're getting some amazing feedback from clubs. It's tough, don't get me wrong. Like, it's tough trying to get into the clubs. There's a long way to go because the football world's quite arrogant. But when you're paying a footballer 200 grand a week and you haven't got a program in place to support players internally, then there's a problem there, So yeah, that's what I'm trying to sort out right now. So yeah, that's the 2 things that I'm balls deep in the minute.
I love it, man. I love both of them.
That's awesome.
I mean,
yeah, I'm sure. Oh, go ahead, man.
You go ahead, brother.
Oh no, I was just gonna say, yeah, I'm sure it's one of those things where trying to trying to break into that through that culture, I'm sure is the most difficult thing. But once you get established with these clubs, I'm sure, 5-10 years from now, we'll look back and be like, how did they not have that? How did they not have support? Just like, I think it's becoming more of a thing, at least in the US, with professional sports teams. Like I've heard of US, like American football teams, who have people come in and talk about their finances, and probably the same thing happens in the NBA and different professional sports organizations, probably all over the world now, where it's becoming more like becoming a millionaire and then losing all of that as a professional athlete. I think used to be a much more common thing. And now it's like, hey, like you got to be smart with your money. You've got plenty of it. I mean, most guys are making, a lot of professional athletes are making enough money in a few years for the rest of their lives easily, comfortably, right? So they're getting coached on you've made it, now how do you keep it? And I think looking back, it's like, how did they not have that? How is there not any kind of support, especially for young athletes? And I think the same thing is going to happen with mental health, because it is so important. And not just, even if you're not cut, even if you have the best career, you're an amazing athlete. Well, you make it, right? You make it through this amazing career. There's still a lot of, it's not like that athlete doesn't have mental issues themselves, and maybe, sometimes maybe even more so, because the pressures building up over years and years of being a professional athlete and achieving this high standard is probably really tough. So I love that. I think that's really going to take off, where you are and around the world.
No, thank you, man. And it's like you just said, you could have an amazing career, and then what do you do? You're 30. Let's say you're amazing and you stop playing at 35. That's still so young to go into your life, and then you've got all this money. You don't know who to trust. You don't know what's going to happen. You've got no goals, because when you're not progressing in anything, progress to me equals happiness. So if you're not learning anything and you're kind of sat on the sofa and doing interviews and you don't really know where you're going and what you're doing, having all that money can be like, well, what the fuck's happening here? I've got all this cash. I don't know what to do. I'm not learning anything. Where do I go from here? Where do I go from here? And like mental health is, everyone's got mental health, and most people have good mental health and then go through times of bad mental health. And it's like your physical health. If you stop training and you stop being athletic, you'll put on weight. And that's what your mental health's like. If you're not training, if you're not learning, if you're not growing, if you're not looking after it, it will over time become worse. So yeah, we've got an uphill battle, because the biggest challenge is getting the clubs to understand that, because they have a psychologist in the clubs, that they don't need what we're offering as well. Because a psychologist is great if you want to get better in your performance and you want to become a better all-round player. But that's not what we're doing. We're offering support services completely independent of the club. So, for example, let's say you two are professional athletes, and let's say you're 17 years old and you've just got a pro contract, and you're still living at home, for example, and you're not getting on with your mum and dad and you're really struggling, and you go into training and you don't like your manager either, but you're really good, so you've got a contract. Who do you speak to? You don't want to go and speak to the club doctor. You don't want to go speak to the psychologist, because it could be seen as a sign of weakness. Where do you go? Maybe a friend, but a friend might not even fully understand the situation. Yeah, exactly. So we want to be completely independent from that, so that we can, over years, build these relationships with players from academy level all the way up to professional, and offer that support as just someone there to listen and help them with their mental health. So it's really exciting. Really exciting.
I like that, because it shows that, you're establishing a form of care, right? Like that, and showing that somebody actually cares, right? Because even somebody like you've been through it, you understand what it's like getting cut. Statistically, I think if we sat down and looked at sports just in general, from anywhere you're at, whether it's American football, whether it's soccer, right, or your football, it's one of those things, man, that if we really sat down and looked at the percentage, or like if you sit there and break it down, okay, what is the likelihood of you actually becoming the shit, the one that's going to be like the LeBron James in basketball over here, or the Lionel Messi, like those individuals, like who, like look at exactly, okay, you might be called a professional because you're playing for a club, but like, are you going to get to this level? And I really think exactly. And then if you start looking at statistically, I think if we set up ourselves that way and be like, well, damn, the odds are against me anyways, right? But I'm going to push, I'm going to grind, I'm going to try my damnedest to become the best. And just reality kicks in at some point and it's like, well, statistics are against me. You're either going to make it or you're not, right? There's a 50-50 chance along the whole way. Like you flip a coin, it's going to land on heads or tails. Just like you could become a pro athlete or not. You're going to either put in the work to be one or you're not going to put in the work. You're either going to go injury free for a while to make it to where you need to, or you're going to have that devastating injury that takes your career away from you, man. You know what I'm saying? So along the way, if we look at it like that going into it, I think, at such a young age, when you invest so much time, even at 9, you're sitting here like, you think your career is over. You're devastated, right? You're already struggling with fighting the demons in the closet because like your life's over, man. But we don't look at it. I'm only 9 years old. And I think whether if it's parents or coaches or whoever it is, or if there's somebody like you in that organization that is there telling them like, man, things happen. And if you look at it, like I said at the beginning of the show, things happen for a reason, right? You didn't make it because there might be some adversity that you're about to go through, or you're going through it right now. Because, Michael Jordan, greatest basketball player of all time, was not that great. And then he put in the work, and then he got to where he needed to be, and did what he did in his career. And there's stories like that all the time that you can take and learn from. But at the end of the day, there's also stories of like, this guy was the greatest basketball player or greatest soccer player, football player at 9 years old. He was the greatest person I've ever seen. And like, you could kind of tell people's eyes lit up and he's going to be the best ever. And then he gets injured, or he gets cut from one team because he had conflict with a manager, not because of his talent, but because they had conflict. And now he's not going to get, or he blackballed. Now nobody's giving him an opportunity. And now he falls into depression. And now he goes through all this crap and he gets on drugs or whatever. But man, if an organization like yours or what you're trying to establish, if there are people that you can turn to and lean on and understand that you don't have to talk to the manager so he will blackball you or lowball you. Now you have somebody you can lean to that's been there, done that, understands it. You can vent, man. It's all about trying to get stuff off your chest. And just like you said with Manspired, man, get out there busting each other's balls and having fun and talking shit to each other, man. I just think this ties perfectly into what I want to ask you next is, with everything that comes along with us being entrepreneurs, right? Like, how important is it to take a step back and realize as humans that we are tribal, because I saw that on your Instagram, and that at the end of the day, we actually need each other, man, to make our life even worth living.
Yeah. Yeah, man, it's so powerful. I don't think we understand how much we actually need each other, in all honesty. Like, for example, I heard something on Joe Rogan's podcast, and he said, like, he was talking about what's the worst thing you could do to somebody? Like, where's the worst place you can put somebody? Okay, prison. Okay, and what's the worst thing you can do to somebody in prison is to lock them by themselves. Now you think about that, you're surrounded by all these murderers, killers, rapists, the worst people, Don't be wrong, there's a lot of people in prison that I'm sure are nice people and they're in there because of a mistake they've made. But the worst thing you can do to somebody in prison is lock them in a cell by themselves and you go insane. So you think about, we need each other. We need human interaction. And what concerns me, and I don't really follow politics because I can get very caught up in things because I'm a bit obsessive. But I see everything in the world and I see people becoming more and more divided, and it worries me because we don't understand how much we need each other. And I think you mentioned social media is amazing because us three are all speaking because of it, But on the flip side, it's making people, you're seeing the more extreme versions of everybody, and you're seeing things that aren't real. You're having fake interactions. You're seeing things that aren't real. I can look at your photo and comment something horrible where I wouldn't say that to you in the street because you'd fucking hit me, and it's, so we're removed from reality and what we're actually living in. It's creating a huge divide mentally for people. So I think especially as men, and I can't speak for women because I think I'm not a woman, but as men and in my experience, men need to kind of support each other a lot better. Men need to understand each other a lot more. We have to, like you said, getting out and busting each other's balls on walks and things. It's so good. Like, although we're going on these physically demanding walks, it's the banter, it's the shit we're giving each other, which is great because, and don't get me wrong, some people on the walk who don't really say much, but most of the time we're giving each other shit, we're having a laugh, because I think that's how men kind of express themselves, especially the men I've been around. I'm sure there are some men who are quiet and don't really do that, but the kind of men coming from an athletic background, it's all about the banter. And especially you being in the military, a lot of the lads that I do walks with now are ex-Marines, and the military sounds crazy for that. And that's the thing that they miss the most is the camaraderie between the brothers. And I think that as men, we miss that. Like, especially as you start getting older and you have families and your friend circle gets smaller, we miss that brotherhood. And that's what I'm trying to create, is getting men to just be themselves, but be themselves together. You know, you don't have to come out to one of the walks and share everything and tell us everything. Just be there, you know, just be there, just be present. That's all we have. Have a break from your phone and just enjoy yourself. And that's important. Like you said, just this global brotherhood, I just feel like we've got to do more to support each other.
Yeah, definitely. And having activities that are offline, right? I think that's important too, because the world's never been more connected than it is now. And it's great the way that it's connected. You know, I mean, social media has, like you said, brought us together on this podcast. It's, you know, enabling us to achieve things that we've never been able to achieve and connect in ways that we never were able to before, even just a few years ago. But it's so important. And now it's more difficult than ever right now with what we're going through, right? To connect in a physical way. But it is really important to get away from our computers and interact with people in real life too. So as much as possible, and obviously now, you know, being as safe as possible. But yeah, I think it's a survival thing. Thousands of years ago, if you were off on your own, there might have been a good chance you're going to get eaten by something, right? You know, you're going to get attacked. And so you just didn't do that. Everybody stayed together. And so I feel like that's just always in us, even though, you know, if you actually are physically going to be, nothing's going to attack you unless you're in the middle of the woods and there's, you know, hungry bears around or something. That might be a different story, but, you know, you're probably going to be okay. But it's just, we still want to be and need to be, you know, connecting with people. And I think that helps us share ideas. That helps us de-stress for sure. So, yeah,
and it lets you know that you're normal, you know, like the problems that you face, most people are facing. And it's nice. I mean, that's why it's so important, you two doing what you're doing with podcasts like this, so that people can listen to other people, because that was the difference for me. I think I can't say exactly what it was, but when I was struggling, my ability to go on YouTube and listen to podcasts and listen to talks and listen to people that I've never met, I honestly believe that that's what changed my life, because there were times where I'd be, when you're that low and you literally feel, I always say this, when you get good news and it makes you sad, that's when you know you're in a bad place. And that's how I was. I'd get good news and I'd be even worse. Like I wasn't worthy of the good news, the positive things coming into my life. And if it wasn't for being able to listen to audiobooks, listen to podcasts, YouTube, I honestly don't think I'd be here, because it sounds daft. How could a video of Tony Robbins or somebody like that literally save me? But it can. And if someone listening to this or listening to any one of your two episodes, that could literally save someone's life. And I don't say that in a cheesy way. I genuinely mean it, because I think that's what worked for me, in all honesty.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think sometimes a lot of our fear and stress and anxiety comes from thinking that we're alone with something and that we're the only one having this thought or this problem with business or whatever it is. And to just know that, to really have a community of people who are willing to share their stories and share their experiences and really tell it like it is so important. Because if you go online, like let's say you're really struggling with digital marketing and you just can't figure out how to, you've got an Instagram following and it's halfway decent, but you're not selling anything. And you're like, I don't understand why this is happening to me. And then you go online and there are these people who have maybe the same number of followers that you do, and they're just killing it, or whatever it is. It just seems like there's so many people out there who are absolutely killing it and doing so well. And seems like they're so profitable, but you have no idea. You don't really know exactly how profitable they are. They could have a lot of followers and no sales. They could have plenty of sales and they could have paid more for those sales than they actually earned. So you just don't know. And I think it's really important to have networks and, connections with people who are just like, hey, I've got that same problem. I was struggling with that a few months ago and I figured it out. Let me share this, let me share the solution with you. So yeah, I mean, as we're talking about mental health as it relates to the rejection of sport, I'm thinking there's a significant correlation with entrepreneurship, and the mental health of entrepreneurs. How, as I'm sure running your own business, we're actually sometimes rejected as entrepreneurs on a daily basis. We're doing outreach, we're trying to connect with people and see if our business is going to click and fit with somebody else. And a lot of people just say no. We're constantly being rejected, or you're lucky sometimes if it's just a no. Sometimes it's a no, and that's a stupid idea. So how do you coach? How would you coach an entrepreneur? Kind of, would it be in a similar way that you would somebody, an athlete?
How to deal with rejection, or?
Yeah. I mean, do you see that, kind of correlation? I mean, maybe it's more of maybe it ends up being more of a statement than a question, but I just see that, that similarity.
Yeah. I mean, what I would say is that sports people generally make good anything away from sports if they find the right path, because if you've been playing sport from a young age, you understand the ability of sacrifice and working hard on a single goal. So whether you put that into whatever you put that into, you're going to be successful. Whether you go and get a job and stay focused on that, whether you put it into another sport, into a business, whatever you do. I think the principles in life are generally the same for everything you do, and it's just a certain career path or field that you go into. I mean, when it comes to rejection, if you're an entrepreneur, you're trying to make money and you fall at the first hurdle and you give up, then you're fucked, aren't you? It's never going to work. And the same for sport, the same for anything, So for me, coaching always comes back to, because coaching is never giving advice. Coaching is always helping people find their own answers. A good coach shines a mirror up at people and helps them see what they're not seeing. Because everybody has blind spots. If this was a coaching session now, I'd be able to find what you're not seeing within yourself and just shine a light on it so you can see it. And that's what a coach's job is.
Discovering something in yourself that you hadn't seen before.
Exactly. So for me with coaching, it always comes back to why you're doing things. And when I look at my own experiences in my own life and I look at the biggest rejections I've faced, I've only ever give up if it isn't what I truly wanted to be doing, And also on the flip side, I've pursued things that I shouldn't have for the wrong reasons through rejection when I should have listened to rejection, There should have been times where I've gone, right, this isn't going to work. And I've pursued it maybe out of arrogance, out of ego, I don't know what, but pursuing it for the wrong reasons. And it's fucking bit me on my arse, So it's about understanding, but I think that comes from experience, understanding when to give up, when to keep going. But if it's right, like we're very intuitive as humans. We know generally when things are right. Trust your gut feeling. My first ever business venture that I got into didn't end well. And the people that I got into business with, I knew I shouldn't have got into business with them from day one. And I was doing it to chase money to make myself feel better.
Right.
And I would have never have got into business with those people from day one. I even knew it myself intuitively. And I thought, what am I doing this for? Yeah. And people even told me, don't get into business with them. And I still did it, and it ended up, don't get me wrong, it was exactly what I needed, and I'm not blaming them, even though I'd never get into business with them now. But it ended how everybody said it would end. And I ignored myself. I ignored my own intuition.
Yeah, man.
I think so. Yeah.
That says a lot, though. The intuition thing keeps coming to me. It's like, you have to trust it, right? But before you're able to trust your own intuition, you got to be able to trust yourself. You got to be able to get out of your mind space and got to get out of the depression mode and all the things that you are doubting and feel insecure about. Because I don't think how can you trust yourself if you don't even know if you can get yourself out of being depressed, sometimes. And so I really think is like putting in that work and knowing, and you touched on it earlier to where it's like, you recognize some of the patterns that you set so you don't go back to that dark space. And I really think in my mind and how I do it is being able to create doors along that to where those doors can be shut. So whenever you're walking through that door, how many doors you have to go through before you get into that spot and to that dark place that you don't want to be around or want other people to know that you've been. And I think as long as you notify or you're able to realize, hey man, like I'm here, but my intuition's telling me to be there. And what I need to do is say, screw this. I'm gonna trust myself. I'm gonna trust that intuition because, man, intuition sometimes can be one of the most powerful things that we ignore. And then even our intuition, we're ignoring it because of the ego or because like that person says don't do it and your intuition said don't do it, but you're like, screw it, man. I'm proving everything wrong, even myself. And then that's when you fall the hardest, man. So I really think circling back and really digging into that intuition thing and really trusting yourself and knowing that typically your intuition is going to be right. And you got to really feel comfortable with knowing that, sometimes it's not the answer you want to hear. But if you're a creative person or if you're that entrepreneur or if you're that person that, has the discipline from the sports that you learn, you could figure out a way to still get to where you want to go. But it might not be down the path that you want to take.
Definitely. And I think that is the most important part, what you just said there, learning to trust your intuition and to trust yourself. Like I see so many people who are trying to build things and they're not in a good place themselves. And you have to have confidence in yourself. Like if I had confidence in my ability when I played football because I'd done it over and over again. And I believed it because I knew it to be true in my own mind. And there's so many people who don't have confidence with themselves. Like when I'm coaching people and I see people who are like, perfectionism is generally a sign of, I just completely mind blank. It's generally a sign of insecurity because you want everything to be perfect before you even start because you're concerned about where it's going to end up. And I say to people all the time, you're trying to build this huge thing and you've not even kept promises with yourself, which is where confidence comes from. If you can't build confidence in just doing one thing a day or keeping the promises to yourself, you're never going to really build anything of meaning because you haven't done the work on yourself. And I think what happens now, especially with how the world is with social media, everyone's trying to change the world because of how that will make them feel once they've done that, when they just need to go internally. And that was me. I was trying to build big fucking buildings, trying to feel amazing. And I just needed to go inside and go internally. And I would have been where I am now years ago. So it comes back to what you said. You have to be able to listen and trust yourself and trust your intuition. And that comes from building confidence with yourself.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more, man. So Reece, I mean, we've touched on so many things in this episode, man. And this is the portion of the episode where we typically ask our guest, from your journey, whether it was entrepreneur or not, because obviously you decided to go this way or that way because something didn't align, from the highs and the lows that you faced. And you might have already touched on it, but what has been the most difficult thing for you on your journey? And what did you do as far as taking action to get unstuck and not lose the traction to get to where you are today, man?
Yeah, really good question, mate. Really good question. I think the most difficult part for me was truly going into my own head and doing the personal work on myself. because it's very easy to start a business. It doesn't all go well. There's a little bit of shame around it as an entrepreneur, and you end up losing contact with the business people you're involved with. And, even football, it was very hard. But I look back now, and did I really love football? No, I don't think I did. I just think I did it for as long as I can remember, and I was good at it. I don't think I didn't have the passion for it I have for what I'm doing now. And I think that in order to get to where I am now, and I still get myself in bad places, I think anybody who says that they aren't being truly honest with themselves. And I think that any creative person has the ability to go to those places, because you're creative because you're solving problems. So at times you can be too deep in the problem. But for me, it was having the ability to truly, over years, this didn't take months or weeks or days, over years, accepting my flaws as well as the things that I'm good at. And I think it's very hard for people to look at themselves, take accountability for where they are, and to do the work that they need to do on themselves, because it's painful. And it's painful admitting that you were a prick for years because you were just wearing an arrogant mask because you didn't want people to see through it. It's painful admitting that you hurt a lot of people just being a twat. And it's hard to say those things, but it's just the truth of who I was back then, because I was in a lot of pain. And there's a very true saying that a very successful man said to me once, and he said that hurt people hurt people. And I see that in everything that I do now. If you're putting pain on others, it's because you're in pain yourself. And I just feel, like the toughest thing is to look at yourself in the mirror and not be distracted, and truly ask what you want to do and hold yourself accountable. So it's the easiest thing to do. It's the hardest thing to do. That's why so many people avoid it. But if you nail that and you get that right, you can surely get to where you want to be, is what I believe.
Yeah, definitely agree with that. Well, Reece, as we wrap up this episode, and this question, a lot of times we get some great advice in that question, in that last question about your highs and lows of entrepreneurship. But if there was just one piece of advice you could give our audience as we go, what would that be?
Slow down. And that's strange coming from me, because for so long I tried to rush everything in my life, because the end destination I was so mentally attached to that because of how it would make me look, because of how insecure I was. And I think when you slow down and see life for what it is and allow yourself to be present, things come that are meant to be in your life. So I think in a world where everyone's telling you to speed up and hustle, slow down and allow yourself to truly feel things, and things will happen. That would be my advice.
That's awesome. Yeah. And that's something that I think it sounds like Manspired addresses, and getting out on hikes and allows you to really slow down. It forces you to do that, kind of get in touch with yourself, with your community, with your, with the world around you, which is so important. So I love that advice.
Yeah, man. Well, guys, I think being present, Reece, you just hit it on the head, man. But I think that's a wrap for this episode. And from the both of us, brother, we want to thank you for taking the time into your day to join us and adding value to what we're doing on our podcast.
Thank you so much, boys. Keep it up. This has been really, really enjoyed it. And an hour has flown by. Just shows how good it was. So sure, thank you so much. And thank you, everybody listening. Appreciate everybody. Thank you.
Awesome. Yeah, I really appreciate having you on, Reece. And you're right, the hour really has flown by. So guys, thank you so much for listening to That Entrepreneur Life. To learn more about what Reece is working on, check him out on Instagram at Reece_Richiardi. That's REECE_RICHIARDI. If you like what you heard today, make sure to subscribe to our podcast on iTunes or any other major podcast directory. You can also find us on all the socials and on our website at thatentrepreneurlife.com.
And with that said, we also want to quickly give a special shout out to our family and friends, to include all of our followers, our listeners, and subscribers. Thanks for continuing to support what we do as entrepreneurs. And don't forget to join us next week for another episode of That Entrepreneur Life.
Thanks for listening to That Entrepreneur Life podcast. Be sure to visit thatentrepreneurlife.com to join the conversation, access our show notes, and discover our fantastic bonus content. Don't forget to join us next week for another episode as we continue to add value. Until next time.